On this video, I talk about my history of discovering attachment trauma, how what we're doing is not always what we think that we're doing, and also why I took a break of 3 years from making videos. We have a lot to talk about, so stay tuned. I'm Robarge, an attachment-focused psychotherapist and a relationship educator, and thanks for checking out this video. It's going to be a little different than other videos to talk about more myself, personal stories, and share stories that hopefully could inspire you to have some self-reflection, to talk about attachment trauma, relationships not working out, family repair, feeling insignificant, trauma reenactment, and how we project our wounds onto other people or even other situations like work. Like we bring our attachment injuries and project our trauma onto a work environment. And all of those things I have done to certain degrees, and or also am at a place of continuing to work out the complexity of what does it mean to live with attachment trauma. And I have been asked for years to share stories about myself, and I don't in general. And there are very few videos that I have where I've talked about myself. A lot of that is a purpose or purposeful because of being a therapist and disclosure and having boundaries around disclosure, that I don't talk about myself, that I'm trained ethically to make sure that what I share with the client is in service to the client's process and in the context of what we're talking about, that I'm not just sharing my story for the sake of sharing my story or to get off on sharing the story, or because I need it. And we need to, as therapists, in the middle of that process, sometimes very split second, very quickly, need to discern, well, is it okay? Should I share a story here to create, to share ideas, to join with the client, it could also shift the pacing. If the client's really in the hot seat for a while and the focus is on the client, I might want to take a break from that or think that that might help the client. And if we put that onto pause, and in the meantime, I'll tell a little story about myself. So I've been very, very mindful of disclosure. And I've made videos in the past where I don't say I'm talking about past clients. I don't say, oh, by the way, this couple came to me for couples therapy, and this partner said this, and then this partner says that, etc. I don't put it in that context, but I am very much holding that in my mind, and I'm trying to pull out the universal dynamics, universal ways of relating, or explain where we get stuck in relationships, and try to translate it in such a way that it's accessible to you as the viewer, and we don't get hung up on telling a story about this other couple, but instead we can more apply it to ourselves. And I think, quite honestly, to give myself a little credit and a little praise, is that I have received enough compliments and positive feedback that I know that has worked. But again, there's been a limitation in not really, fully talking about what I do as a therapist, and then how I know certain relationship dynamics and insecure attachment cycles and push-pull, distancer, pursuer, relating because of my own personal history, but also my family history, and very much wanted to protect myself and protect even revealing myself to my family. Not necessarily wanting to say, oh, by the way, let me tell you about my non-relationship with my father. Let me tell you about the challenges of developmental, emotional, relational trauma as it unfolds in my relationship with my mother. And even to say that, I still cringe. I think one reason why I cringe to even call attention to my relationship with my mother is because I still have an active relationship with her and or unresolved challenges that I've been trying to work out, and somewhat different. It's a bit easier to mention my father because he died when I was 14, and it was a bit sudden. It was a kind of freak accident in a way. He was hit by a train in his car, and it happened to be on December 20th. I was 14 years old, but I referenced the date because it was day one of the Christmas holiday week, and really changed, the family landscape. So working out attachment trauma with a dead person in some ways has been a bit easier, as horrendous as that sounds. The dead person doesn't necessarily change. There's a kind of fixed, there's some fixed parameters to work within that make it a little easier to understand the relationship or the relationship that you don't have. And with my relationship with my mother and family is this idea that it's still open to evolve, to change, to grow, to be the next chapter, which creates hope, which creates false hope, and to still be activated by those dynamics. And this is not something I ever thought I would talk about publicly on a video, on social media, to appear on YouTube, to appear on Facebook, wherever it is. Also knowing that, potentially my family can see these videos. And it's so problematic, this social media thing. We're living in a narcissistic age. It's the best self-sickness, the need to manipulate our persona and our presentation, and especially someone who makes a bunch of videos. And I took a break for 3 years, which I'm going to really talk about on this video, what that's all about. But the context in which these videos are shared, in which I would be challenged to be more transparent with my own personal process, it's really in a context of narcissism. And I don't mean my own personal narcissism. I mean the environment, social media itself, and being in anyone who's sharing something that appears authentic and sincere, it's always tainted and not sincere, because we have consciousness that we're doing it to manipulate getting more views and subscribers and likes. And, oh, by the way, I have this product. Oh, by the way, if you get value from this video, please consider becoming a sustaining supporter. You can join us in the community, you can purchase one of my courses, etc., etc. And there's, even if it's not immediately the monetary value, which, let's face it, why am I doing this? Why does anybody make videos for free and, make another video for free and more content and work every day at hard, it takes a lot of effort to pull together content and to reveal oneself and to set up the lighting and, So it's just so narcissistic around persona manipulation in order to gain favor by whoring one's personal story in the guise of authenticity. And it could still be delivered as authentic, but it's still left for me with a bad taste in my mouth, and it's an icky dynamic. The other thing in the context in the age of narcissism is that the viewer, the consumer, believes they have a right to the person sharing their personal information, that they have a right to not have an opinion or judge or even gossip about it, in any context, even going into a different Facebook group and creating some commentary about, what someone said about their self. That's gossip, it's the definition of gossip, and it's all these people who don't really know each other. I don't know you. It's so one-sided. I'm talking to this camera. You're a composite. You're an idea. You're a collective of all these people, and then also you really don't know me. I have not hidden. I've not obscured my identity as someone who grew up gay, and my sexual orientation is that I'm a gay man. I've been, out for, 30 some years or something. It's not something that I've led with. And I made one video, which was very surprising to me that there were a number of straight people. It was a video about growing up gay and the wound of the development of the self. And that's essentially what all of us have experienced with any type of attachment trauma, attachment injuries that are relational, emotional, developmental, and creates obstacles to evolving into our mature self. There's a wounding of the development of the self when our relationships deny us warmth, connection, emotional resonance, curiosity, someone showing you curiosity for your inner world, and the reciprocity that can create, the mutuality. These are all lovely big words, which I actually, really believe them. They're not a bunch of filler. That in order to create quality bonded relationships, it's all about emotional availability and being curious about each other's experience. So this video that I made about growing up gay was really interesting, that it is about the wound of the development of the self. And when you're told, for specifically in my generation growing up, that to be gay means you're sick, you have a mental illness, it's criminal, you're judged by God, you're less of a person, you're less of a man if you happen to identify as a man and or be in that category, and that there's just fundamentally something wrong with you. And I grew up needing to be highly guarded about revealing myself. So I inherited in such this really created this gut level feeling of the townspeople are out to get me. This idea that if I'm really myself, if I'm really transparent, then one day I'm going to get a knock at the door from the townspeople holding the pitchforks and angry and saying, how dare you be yourself? So I wanted to protect that. I didn't want to lead with that. And then every so often, I've been very lucky to get positive comments. I do get the occasional, what do you know, faggot? Or, I'm not taking advice from a faggot. Which is lovely, sarcastically say, lovely to still, to receive that. And it might not be as emotionally charged, or the language might not be as harsh, but I do get people who, my entire life, I, have a slight gay, effeminate voice. So to be called out, I was very lucky in high school. I wasn't really bullied, but there were some moments I had like fringe bullying. And it would, the context of that was making fun of my voice. So every so often on social media, I do get like the comment like, he sounds gay. And then some other choice comment about, what the hell does he know about, my relationship with my girlfriend, assuming that, was from a man in a heterosexual relationship. So I have been cautious. No one wants to be called a faggot. No one wants to have one's own caution and fear around the townspeople with pitchforks coming after us. The world is not safe. The world is not friendly. The world can be cruel. And then having said that, the world has been very, very nice and supportive to me in the realm of social media. But nonetheless, I've been guarded about how much I engage in the narcissistic the collective narcissistic dynamic of what it means to be on social media. And Lady Gaga said that social media is the toilet of the internet, which might or might not be true, but it's a lovely framework of, if you want to find nastiness, if you want to find judgment, if you want to find ignorance, and a lot of misinformation. Of course, it's easily accessible in the context of the social media toilet. Again, thank you, Lady Gaga, for that. So I have had a relationship with disclosure as a therapist, not to really reveal my personal history. there's a particular YouTube channel that informs, or I give a little credit to why I'm making this video, which is really about this idea of like the truth sets you free, or to be transparent. That quite honestly, it's been going on. I have recently in the last so many months uploaded videos, but I took like a 2.5-year break. Maybe even if I really look at it, it was probably maybe even like a 3-year break of not making videos on a regular basis, where I initially made 170 videos rather prolifically. And I used to get a lot of comments saying, "Alan, do you ever sleep?" Like, "Oh my gosh, you're always, sharing new stuff constantly, and it's all this great content is free, And what happened is that holding myself back in trying to maintain this boundary around disclosure actually created an isolation for my own attachment trauma to be projected into my work. It's a very common thing. Work environments are, well, especially for me, my work is about attachment injuries and attachment wounds. It just so happens that I live with an attachment injury and attachment wound, and I talk about it on a regular basis, and I think about it, and I write about it. And if I'm exchanging with trauma on a regular basis every day, then it's going to activate trauma. So the self-care idea is really valid, and especially a boundary around taking breaks. And quite honestly, I don't take a lot of breaks that pull me out of that realm of trauma consciousness. And sometimes trauma consciousness moves into trauma trance and projecting and playing out some of the trauma dynamics, what we call trauma reenactment. So holding back and knowing that I'm in this trauma environment in my mind and inviting trauma consciousness, it exaggerated my challenges to moving through and beyond my own attachment wounds. So there is this one YouTube channel called Yes Theory, and in a way in this moment it's really much a shout out in gratitude to the creators of that site. A number of men, guys, friends got together, and it's around the premise, it's really contained in the phrase yes theory, saying yes to life and challenging themselves in places where they feel uncomfortable and taking the risk to reveal themselves. And their videos, for me, successfully inspire me and really capture the humanity of bridging together the universality of all of our struggles. And I think that they do a really successful job of revealing themselves authentically, and maintain some balance of integrity and not exploiting any challenge and or even if they would self-identify as having some kind of wound. I think it's just a really successful balance, and that has inspired me to be transparent with you here. Again, this idea of the truth sets you free. Now, or the truth sets me free. So I don't want to hold back and need to share what really is going on in the last 3 years and why didn't I make videos.